You're fired, you understand? Fired.
Shut up, listen, and learn.
There's a storm hitting us in 6 hours. We're gonna find out who's who.
I want to make it 80 and wipe that grin off your face.
Looks uncomfortable.
I think it's kind of itchy.
Never know what you like till you try it.
The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball.
And by God, I have had this Congress.
Come on down now! Chew on the dog!
Nothing exploded or got shot.
Nobody got shot there. Just a dead guy.
She's talking about eating a dog.
That's true.
That's untoward.
Chew on the dog, that's true.
Speaking of which, I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are
the Cinemaniacs.
So, we don't have to be quite as breathless.
That's true.
Mahoney, as we were last week. But I don't have much to talk about other than movies because that's kind of what I do.
Okay.
So, shall we?
Sure.
Okay, may I?
You should.
Oh, you're so gracious, Miss Swiss Miss. Hi, how are you? Up first today, we have a new film telling an old tale. The tale as old as time, or at least as old as the West, which is where it's set. You got your Christian Bale. You got your other people, whose names that are not springing forth from my maw at the moment. And it is about, to put it in old-timey terms, cowboys and Indians, and what happens when a group of people traveling through the West come up against hostiles.
Accidentally pull a speaker loose, please turn it in at our snack bar or box office.
Whoops.
Hi.
Sorry, not cheating. I'm not cheating. I'm not cheating.
No. You were brushing up.
Yes, absolutely.
So
by Shakespeare.
I was at the Sunday noon matinee.
Okay, I was at the Saturday noon matinee.
So we both went to the early show.
Yes.
A very robust audience in that theater.
Yep.
I sit toward the front.
And mine was very quiet.
Yes.
Very respectful.
Mine ultimately was.
Okay, ultimately was.
I had to shush somebody, and it took. Maybe they just thought that it's cool to talk louder than me right now during the trailers. To me, lights down, mouths closed. That's just how I operate.
You shush people during trailers?
God, yes.
So I don't go that far.
To me, when the trailers start...
It's always a bad indication.
Yeah.
But,
maybe that's because I'm just like, oh, they're not shutting up yet.
Right.
Anyway, it was a very full audience filled with grown-ups, which is always nice to see. I'm not sure everybody got the Western they thought they were going to get.
Well,
when
I
they went
didn't,
to see
but...
this. I will say that the crowd, a section of the crowd applauded when the movie was over.
Yep.
Which is interesting and unusual, and I mean, people on screen aren't going to hear it, but that's always kind of cool because somebody liked it so much they couldn't control themselves and they had to slap their hands. So basically the storyline is Christian Bale is an Indian fighter, as you would call him, somebody who was known for his brutal techniques in subduing the enemy in the Old West. And he is charged with bringing an Indian chief who's been, and his family who have been imprisoned for 7 years, who's also known by the white side as being very, very brutal and savage and evil, and how dare you let this guy go.
And in particular to Bale's friends and family.
Yeah, exactly. So Bale has a big beef, but this chief has requested being allowed to go back to his home territory in Montana because he's dying of cancer and he doesn't have much time left. And the president, Harrison, sends down a rigid dictum that he should be able to do that. So basically you have Bale and a bunch of soldiers who are not sympathetic to the Native Americans and a very small group of Native Americans, and they come across Rosamund Pike, who's a woman whose family, the film opens with a very brutal slaying of an entire family.
Yep.
They don't spare any age group killing in this movie. And she's sort of shell-shocked, and it's this travel across the West, and the specter that's sort of floating around the whole time is a group of, was it Cherokee? It was a certain tribe who commits
Apache. I think there was the Apache that was after him.
A tribe who commits an attack at the beginning of the film that even to other Native Americans are known as, these guys are crazy, they're evil. So there's this threat of attack from outside and just survival and interpersonal things. Will they remain? Will the cavalry guys remain hating the Native Americans, or will they just say, we need all the help we can get? So it's interesting. It's very contemplative. It's very thoughtful. Mm-hmm. Performances I thought were pretty good, although some of Rosamund Pike's histrionics because she's had a very traumatic experience, they could verge over into being laughable if you were an insensitive type of person.
Okay.
But then you remember why she's acting like that, and you're like, maybe she has the right to. Beautiful vistas.
Yes.
Beautiful. This is a big screen movie. In terms of the scope of the story, it really isn't. But the mountains and the plains and amber waves of gray. Amber waves of gray. I used to know the words.
We
to
get
that
it.
Song. Yes, thank you. That's really gorgeous. So, I felt like the movie was longer than it needed to be for what it was trying to do and trying to say. So I felt myself getting a little restless and bored at times. It is extremely brutal when the acts of violence come up. So that'll wake you right up. But it's not the zippy, action thriller that maybe some of the trailers might make it look like. But I think if you're into Westerns, if you're into, I don't know how historically accurate this is, but it seems like within the context of the story, it's trying to be accurate. I don't know if this really happened or not. And Christian Bale's a bit mumbly, but good. And overall, I thought it was good, just nothing I would necessarily recommend unless you had a bent for this sort of thing.
Right. I was struck, in my opinion, I went to this for the Western, everybody's saying, oh, this is the best Western since Unforgiven. And I don't think it's nearly in that category. I thought it was interesting. But in many respects, I found this to be a culture clash where the characters needed to overcome their oppressive feelings for the other race, the other people. But it could have been set anywhere, and it happened to be set in the Old West. So I wouldn't necessarily call this a Western, although it's set in the West. There's some gunfights and things like that. I agree overall that it felt a little bit long to me. It did get a little bit draggy and boring, but I was left with the impression that I was struck by the lack of dialogue. That so much of it was told visually. I thought that was interesting. And so much of the nonverbal information that comes across is through Bale's performance. I thought he was wonderful. While I can understand your comment about the potential for Rosamund Pike's kind of histrionics, I didn't find it that way. I thought she was really terrific too.
I mean,
so
if you're
overall,
a terrible, insensitive person,
you might read it as like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So not struck at this as being the greatest movie in the world. In many respects, you and I, or at least I, try to decide and tell everybody, is this worth going to the theater? Is this something you have to see in the theater? I think you're right that for the vistas, if you really want to get that wonderful experience, you're not going to get this even on your 70-inch HD TV or anything like that. So that's worthwhile. But I think in many respects, this might, since it is so personal a journey for these characters, I think this might actually play better on home video. So anyway, I ended up liking the movie well enough. I didn't think it was great, but I thought 2 or 3 really fine performances.
It's almost like an old Western, really serious midnight run when you think about it.
Yeah.
When the movie started, I'm like, wait, this is Midnight Run.
That's
without
true.
the laughs.
But if you didn't get enough horses,
oh no,
there are lots of horses in that picture. But if you didn't get enough horses, you could head over to Afghanistan. Hey, when you think Afghanistan, don't you think horses? It's post 9/11, and we're looking to find out who the heck was behind all of that. We've got a bunch of guys, our good guy men, off to try to find out who it is, and they resort to all sorts of local chicanery, not to put it lightly, because in order to defend the Stars and Stripes in the Amber Waves of Grain, to which he recently referred, you have to have 12 strong.
Treat the family.
So I'm kind of two sides on this one. Anytime I go into a war picture anymore, and not in any way, shape, or form that I know personally what war could possibly be like or have the courage to do what these men and women do, but I go into a war picture thinking, okay, I've seen a whole bunch of them. Why do I need to see this again? And this was an interesting take. This really does center. It's 75% personal journeys of all of these men that we see and how it affects them, their families. And we've seen that kind of before. And then it's about the mission. But it really is much more about the overscoping discussion of family, both, and we've heard this before. I think ultimately what I'm trying to say is we've seen this before, but this does it really well.
I'm okay with like cliched films, like, oh no, another rom-com. Well, just make it good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was watching Saving Private Ryan last night, and there's a scene where Ryan loses all of his brothers, and so Tom Hanks comes and releases him, and Ryan says, Matt Damon says, well, I've lost these brothers, I'm not going to desert these brothers. And this is what this movie was really all about. It's leaving all of these soldiers, leaving their families, but creating another family there. And I thought, even though I said, yeah, I knew that, it was really pretty effective. I think we spent, and for me, I've seen a couple of other films, I can't think of them currently, but we got into the action so quickly that I felt that, like, when characters would die, if that was the case, I didn't know them well enough, and I didn't really care. And this movie takes the time to follow these men on their journeys and everything beforehand. So once they get into the battle, and they're there as the first wave to defend, democracy and everything after 9/11, I was really surprised that I thought 12 Strong was pretty effective.
I didn't see it.
Okay.
So I'll
You have something to which you may look forward to which you may look.
Yes,
on video.
Exactly. See, that's the thing, is if one of us misses something when it's theatrical, 6 months or 8 months later, we're going to talk about it again. So we have a second chance to enforce our opinion upon the viewers at home. Speaking of opinions, most people are of the opinion that this movie is based on sucks. Can I say that before 10? Too late. So here we have a film based on reality about the man who you may know as the director and star of arguably the worst film of all time, The Room. His name is Tommy Wiseau. He is portrayed here by Mr. How did I forget his name? I don't know. Let me just take a look over here.
James Franco.
James Franco, of course.
Go.
How could I forget him? Maybe because I don't really care for him. He could be a wonderful guy. And according to some reports in the news, probably not. But I'm just saying, I'm talking about his performances. I don't really care for the performances so much. We have the disaster artist.
Ordinary things don't seem to appeal? Then try one of our frozen delicacies.
I hadn't seen that trailer before.
Well, I'm glad I could bring something new to your life.
You've seen The Room.
Yes, I have.
And you've read the book this is based on.
Yes.
So, what is your opinion of the cinematic experience?
The film, and so again, it's based on, this is like a making of, as you said, what is kind of considered one of the worst movies ever made, and it certainly was pretty bad. I don't know if I'd put it up there.
Yeah.
But what surprised me about this movie, The Disaster Artist, was it really seemed to glorify Tommy Wiseau. We have a bunch of people at the beginning, industry people, and it's kind of sad if Kevin Smith is the most important person that you can get on there. I think I recognize some of the other faces. But there's just, so this film opens with directors saying, it's just amazing what Tommy Wiseau was able to do, and he's just a brilliant man, and I think he should be president. And
they really, I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, they start with just saying, wow, what a wonderful, a guy going out and living the dream.
What I said off air, what's amazing about Tommy Wiseau is that this guy has become, not rich, but he has become famous for doing a really bad job.
Right.
Like he failed.
Yeah.
And this movie screens
and
constantly.
He's by far the worst thing about the movie The Room. Mm-hmm. So a couple of things. In comparing the media, what I didn't expect was how kind of glorified they made him. But also, and this may be more true about Wiseau as a person, that this movie made me see more of kind of the dream. This kind of comes off as an American dream story.
That's what I got out of it.
And it felt manipulative at the very end. Spoiler alert, I'll call you back if you want to turn it off. But at the very end, he shows this movie in the world premiere, and everybody just starts laughing at the film. There's a difference between laughing at and laughing with. But in the span of about 10 minutes, his buddy Greg, played by, and in the movie, played by James Franco's brother, Dave Franco, convinces him, oh no, it's great, and they really love you, and they call him up, and everybody's all happy about it. You can come back if you want. So I was surprised at kind of how glorified and what a good dreamer they made Wiseau out to be. I was also surprised that you made reference to the fact that this made him rich. Apparently this man had tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars.
He's still a very mysterious figure.
Yes, so at the end of the film they say nobody knows how old he is, where he's from, how much money he's really got. But so in watching the original movie and reading the book, and again, we need to take whatever movie we were reviewing at its own, The Disaster Artist. But I didn't get the sense. I always thought this was one of the Kevin Smith scrounging to make your movie kind of a thing, and it certainly wasn't that. What surprised me with the Oscars, well, it didn't surprise me because James Franco has obviously become one of the figureheads of the sexual allegation and rumors, and I think that's unquestionably why he didn't get a nod. I thought he was spectacular in portraying Wiseau. I didn't think Dave Franco was all that great. So overall, what I was left with was James Franco's performance just knocked my socks off. I was often thinking, that's the real guy.
Right.
Other than that, it was an interesting enough film, but not nothing. If you really like The Room, if you really like stories about movie making, I thought it was interesting enough.
I wonder how this would play for someone who's not seen or heard of The Room.
I think they'd find it amazingly boring.
I think you should seek out The Room first and suffer through it. Or watch it with friends, or see it at a midnight screening or something like that.
Walter, my younger son, and I debated whether, because I got The Room so he could see it, whether we should see this first and then The Room, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think it's better to watch the original movie first.
Because I think the original film will give you context for this. I'm sure there are people who go to see this and have never heard of The Room, and it probably still works. I'd love to hear from somebody who's done that.
Yeah.
Does the movie make sense? What's the impact on you? I thought it was well made. It was interesting. I knew of The Room, so it was interesting to see a version of how it all came to be. Where did this thing come from? This film attempts to answer that. I really enjoyed the casting. In parts, it took me a minute to realize this, but Zac Efron is in it.
Yep.
Really funny as a bad actor. A guy who takes his tough guy role almost dangerously seriously in the film. Josh Hutcherson plays a young bad actor, and it took me a while to realize that's who it was. And I usually pick up on that immediately, even when people have makeup and stuff, but this one it didn't. So there's a lot of really good casting in it. I do say if you stay to the end, we were talking off air,
right.
There was side by side where you see the reenactment of scenes from The Room with the actual scene, so you can see what the original film was like. And if you stay through, if not to the end, near the end of the credits, there is a scene that was cut out of the proper film where Wiseau is in this film acting badly as some other character with a weird hat and sunglasses talking to Tommy Wiseau, James Franco's Tommy Wiseau. That was kind of amusing. But yeah, I thought it was good. I didn't love it like some people I know, but right. I liked it. And I'm not a big Franco fan, even before the recent allegations. So it made me, into that. I still sort of saw Franco through Wiseau, but he did a really good job at being somebody else. And there's some subtle makeup that made him look a little bit different.
Right.
So it's good. It's overall a funny film with some drama, and it does go for that theme of the American dream, and if you want something and don't give up, you might possibly get it. That also is much easier when you have millions of dollars.
It's true.
Just saying.
So
that is it for.
I think that's what we got in theaters.
Theaters that we've talked about. Obviously, that we were going to talk about. We thank our friends at the Latches Theater in Brattleboro, Vermont, for sponsoring this fine program. Fine's debatable. And we will now move on to that which you can see on the home video format, device, service,
however they get
platform of your choice.
Not quite sure how, but however you do end up getting it. Perhaps you were wondering, it's been about a decade since people have been gruesomely murdered. Haven't you been wondering what might be happening? Well, the police are kind of wondering too, because they're finding a lot of connections to some recent murders and dead bodies that have been turning up. It looks like it might just be the work of Jigsaw.
Old Milwaukee tastes as great as its name.
So bring the kids, bring the grandparents, save this one for Easter.
Little family. Go see Paddington 2.
Yes.
And then watch Jigsaw.
Yeah, just to cleanse the palate and get that future therapy insured.
Right.
I was not a major fan of the Saw films. I don't really think I ever liked the Saw movies. I always thought it was a good concept, but I gave up after the third one. Apparently, he dies in one of Jigsaw. The bad guy dies in one of these movies. So
I think it's like in the third one he's dead. Yeah.
I can't recall if in the trailers or in any of the ad materials, I'm sure they give everything away, whether they tip the hat that Jigsaw is behind everything in this film.
Okay.
I don't know if I just ruined it or not, but it's supposed to be a big shock in the movie, and then ultimately they explain, how it's him, or maybe it's not him.
Might not be.
Did I say it was him?
You didn't.
Tobin Bell is in this film. Let's just say that much. So I was along for the ride with this movie. This is not a very high-budget film, not a lot of characters, not a lot of locations, gruesome and clever with the contraptions and all of the things. It still made me roll my eyes a little in what the original Saw movies did, where at the end they reveal that he was everywhere and he saw everything and he pulled every string in the universe to make all this stuff happen. And I'm just like, that's a little silly. But overall, it was a cheap, good matinee for me. So I think if you like the Saw movies, you may be more critical of this one than I was. But at any rate, if you like the Saw movies, you just got another one. When by the laws of humanity and nature and physical law, you shouldn't have gotten another one. So there's Jigsaw.
See, I've always kind of enjoyed the Saw movies. What I liked most about the first one was its dirty look, just low budget look, which it certainly was. And they've pretty quickly morphed into really slick looking high-end products, which is okay. What I've enjoyed about the Saws 3, 4, 5, however many we've got, I think this is 6, is what I consider to be pretty clever ways they keep bringing Tobin Bell, the Jigsaw character, back, because he did die in like the second or third one. This is another one where they bring him back. Somehow Jigsaw is involved. And for some reason, this one didn't work for me. I didn't find the gruesome devices or anything all that effective. One of the things I enjoyed about the earlier movies was Jigsaw was really kind of almost an Avenger, because not Avenger as in like Captain America. I refuse to acknowledge Iron Man because I'm down on Iron Man after Captain America versus. Anyway, I'm a Captain America fan. But he found people who had committed vices, who were sinful, and the traps related to that. I think all that is kind of gone by the wayside. They're clever traps, but they don't connect anything. I think the way they involve Jigsaw in this one doesn't work for me. So for me, of all of the Saw movies, this one was the least effective, and I think, in my opinion, I'm ready for, not this is going to happen, but I'm ready for the franchise to kind of end. But we see him every year, and that's kind of a fun part about it. So we'll see how they bring him back again.
Well, I think it's a matter of whether they make enough money.
Oh, yes,
so, if this one made enough money, we'll probably see another one. I think this was a stab at, we haven't done one in a while, and there's no major horror franchise going on. Let's see if we can kickstart it. I'm waiting for Final Destination to come back. They can make those until I drop.
Yeah.
Which hopefully is not next week, but those were always fun.
Yeah.
They were always clever. So, up next, if I may.
It's your turn.
Oh, boy. Do I want to talk about this movie? First, I'll watch the trailer so I can remember anything about this movie, because I saw it in the theater, and it's gone like the wind. And speaking of wind, what are you going to do when all kinds of international weather goes crazy, and tsunamis and hot hail and maelstroms and other things with consonants? Well, you call Gerard Butler, who's the one man who can stop the Geostorm.
Protein you require from wieners made by Oscar Mayer.
Okay, so I went into this.
I don't remember that movie at all.
I'm pretty sure you saw it.
I did.
No, yeah, I remember you.
I remember not liking it.
Yeah,
but
I remember you coming on.
Yeah.
So you just wiped it from your brain.
Oh, yeah.
I went into this because I love just disaster movies and just chuck your brain at the door and have fun. So I was looking forward to just leave your brain alone, watch wild special effects going on, and this was really disappointing. The effects weren't all that good. This reminded me a lot of, and I'm trying to...
it felt like a mix of other things we've seen.
Yes, well, certainly was. But the initial concept, I like Gerard Butler a lot. He's been in some of my favorite comedies. But really, am I supposed to believe that he's the scientist behind this world-spanning... I just don't buy it. There was a movie, I forget what it was called, where Harrison Ford was supposed to know all about these computer viruses and inlays. And when he would just say something in computerese, I didn't believe that he understood any idea what he was talking about. So I think Butler is poorly cast in this. He's the action hero, but this is a strange action film. Jim Sturgis as his brother, they just don't connect for me. So this whole thing was really just kind of a waste of time. If you've got a couple hours just to literally blow in, you like watching just kind of crazy fantasy stuff going on.
Watch something better.
Watch something better, I guess. Not fantasy as in like, The Hobbit or anything like that. But I just thought, even though I was looking forward to kind of a silly romp, I thought Geostorm was kind of a waste of time.
So get a copy of this, physical copy, get a copy of San Andreas, and get a copy of Day After Tomorrow, which, to be fair, I haven't seen.
I kind of
Snap
like
them in
Day After
half
Tomorrow, actually,
and make the world a better place.
Right.
I'm not going to speak much about this because I honestly don't rember it and I haven't seen it since I saw it in the
That must
theater.
have been what an impact it had on you.
Not a very deep impact.
But okay, he beat me to it.
I haven't seen that one either, funny enough. For better or worse, I saw Armageddon. Didn't like that much either. So I remember seeing this and thinking it was really stupid, and I like all kinds of movies. We'll be talking about some later that are stupid. But this one was just dumb and just like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
And the ridiculous, impossible action of the kind where somebody's dodging flying cars and they're barely missing and it's all cartoon everything, and I just didn't like it. The one thing I remember from this, now that I saw the trailer, Jim Sturgis, British, Gerard Butler, Australian, if I recall. Or Irish, Scottish.
Yeah.
He's not from here. Both guys are always cast as Foamericans here, and I can always hear it, and it always bugs me because I can hear it. I'm like, oh, you're saying the words wrong. People do have accents. People in our government have accents. It's okay. Not everybody talks like they're from Detroit. There was a moment in this film where they casually both mentioned that they were born in England but raised in America. I'm like, okay, cool, you're addressing it. You're addressing why they sound a little off. That's okay. Right. If you have to make them sound American, that's cool. Otherwise, I just thought it was big, dumb action garbage of the like that I don't enjoy. Other people were in the theater and they paid and nobody burned the screen, so I'm going to guess they probably thought it was okay too. Or they were too depressed to get the torches out.
You never know.
Speaking of torches, let's burn a torch for those who have suffered and sacrificed.
An eternal one, which should probably stick around. Miles Teller gives up the drumsticks and picks up other kinds of weapons that he might have available. He and his comrades, we've been talking about brothers and families of soldiers, have some trouble, as is often the case, coming back to terms and coming to grips with being back in America when you've faced some pretty horrific battle and bloodshed. Even though all of the time what everybody here else is saying is thank you for your service.
That leaves you with a nice warm glow.
So, we've kind of talked about this earlier on, seen the story. I thought Teller was pretty good. I'm learning to like him. I had issues with some of his early stuff, particularly like as Mr. Fantastic. He just seemed way too young. He was a 12-year-old Mr. Fantastic.
Everybody has forgotten that movie already.
Yeah, I think so. But, he's grown into some of these roles. I thought he was particularly good in this, which was, for me, not the best example of this kind of film. Kind of mundane, we've seen it before, but, and it's a perfectly good story. It's about these men and women who, perform their service for us so that we can live in a free society, and then how they're treated or how they're not cared for, to dangle a preposition, when they come back. But I think I just felt like there was not a whole lot really new, and so what I took away from this was that at least Teller was pretty good, and I think I'm learning to like him more than I used to.
It's one of those things where I didn't see it. One of those things where we see, you and I, we see as much as we can all our lives.
Right.
So when something that's similar to something we've already seen pops up and it's not as good, you're like, what's the point?
Right.
And I have to remind myself, well, probably not everybody's seen Coming Home, or not everybody under a certain age. So for this period of time and generation, this might be the first time they are exposed to such notions. Doesn't mean I'd sit through it again, but that's why you'll see, really, let's let everybody know where Superman came from. That's why every 5 years we need to be reminded that Spider-Man, his
got
parents.
bitten by exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of treachery and radioactive spiders and things that go bump in the night.
Yes.
Oh, do you want me to do it? Do you want?
I can do it, so we can certainly. Who really knows what's giving you problems down there? It's all you're in Derry, Maine, and it's just a happy-go-lucky kind of place, and you're spending time with all your friends in the summer, out riding bikes and everything like that. Wait a minute, what's that clown doing under there in the grates? You better watch out, because things that are going on all around your town aren't really what they might seem, and the only thing you can blame is it.
Because they taste delicious and give you vitamins and protein, too.
Hey, it's every horror trailer.
Something jumping out at you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I am a person who remembers and still has on tape the 1990-91 TV movie two-parter.
Right, with Tim Curry.
With Tim Curry as Pennywise and Richard Thomas and a bunch of people. So this, I can't help but think about
Yeah,
that
I
when
think
I
you
watch
have to.
this. A lot of people poo-poo that version of it because of its dated elements, dated in how it was produced,
Okay.
or the technology for the ending. A lot of people really love this movie. A lot of people say this is the scariest movie they've ever seen, to which I always say, you don't watch many scary movies.
Right.
It's very well made. To me, the strongest part of this is the stuff with the kids.
Performances, too.
And just the whole, how they depict the youth of these kids riding bikes and dodging bullies and, you know, getting into trouble and discovery and awe and wonder and all that stuff. That Spielberg-y kind of stuff. That was the best part. There's CG in it. I don't like CG. I don't find CG scary. It looks fake and cheesy to me. So whenever that was used for terror, I was just like, okay, well, when's the shot over?
Right.
The jumping up and popping out stuff is, to me, lame.
Yes.
This Pennywise was okay, but to me what was scary, and I can't help but compare it, about the Tim Curry version is that for the most part he wasn't trying to be scary.
Right.
And in this one it's all, which I'm like, you're trying very hard, and it's not scary to me. But it was so well made that I overall I did like this. It's funny, I hadn't started watching Stranger Things until recently, and it's very interesting to me. I really have to wonder if this new version of it was thrown into production because Stranger Things was so popular.
The phenomenal success,
because Stranger Things structurally is the same thing.
And you
it's
even
a bunch
have
of
some
kids.
same actors.
There's some of the same actors. So I have no idea if that's the case or not. I know Hollywood just wants to remake everything, so that might have been it anyway. This is part 1 of 2, which people should know going in. People did not know when this came out in the theater. Original book, I'm told, was mostly flashback. The adult kids who survived this. So I think wisely they chose to say, okay, well, we're going to make this 2 movies. The stuff with the kids will be part 1, and the stuff with them as adults will be part 2, which makes sense dramatically, because if you see somebody as an adult narrating the film, you know they survived being a kid.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. I'm very curious to see who they cast as the adults. While I was watching this film, I'm like, okay, they have to have Amy Adams as the girl, right? And they have to have so-and-so as this. And I found out that they hadn't done that yet. I don't know if they've even started. Like, this isn't coming out apparently until 2019.
Okay.
And I thought they would have, had cameras rolling 2 weeks after this made $1 billion.
That's certainly what I thought, yeah.
Apparently they're doing something crazy and taking their time to make it good. So, yeah, I thought it was good.
Imagine that. Yeah, I'm a big King fan, and you're right. You alluded to just kind of the feel of what life was like in Derry, Maine. I felt that you could have immediately cut from one scene here over to Stand By Me, taking place in a completely different part of the town, and it just felt exactly the same. So I thought they really captured that for people who are King fans. This was never one of my favorite stories of his, and I never found any of it terribly scary. For me, this Pennywise is effective, but it is a jump out at you kind of scary. What I was left with once again was how solid the performances were from the kids in this, and I am looking forward to the sequel to see where they carry this. So overall, I thought it was pretty effective. No pun intended. It wasn't rated R, as I recall. I think it was PG-13.
Was it? I couldn't tell you.
I'm not sure.
Once I hit the age where it didn't matter.
There's certainly not. You're right. You don't remember that. There's no nudity. There's not a lot of. There might be some language, but there's not a lot of bloodshed, as I recall, or anything in it. If it is rated R, it's just for horror themes.
I would say that
because often it got kind of scary. This certainly isn't for little kids, but again, I thought it was pretty effective, and I'm looking forward to the sequel.
Speaking of effective,
yes,
here's a film that will appeal to a limited audience, like me. I'm very limited in many ways. Newest release from AGFA, the American Genre Film Archive, Alamo Drafthouse connected entity that has just a plethora of film prints of strange, odd films that they are remastering in 4K and HD and putting out for you, the insane public who likes this sort of thing. Here we have arguably the greatest Turkish martial arts film of all time, entitled The Sword and the Claw.
Mommy, look at Bill! Jimmy, please, not now. I'm too busy.
Okay, it's totally ridiculous and silly.
Yes.
It is a phrase I like to use, cheap jack. It is a cheap jack production from Turkey. Basically, it's a very simple, evil ruler of a kingdom is trying to subjugate these bad people, and this one super fighter shows up to just, kick ass and take names. And eventually his hands get the bad guys catch him and burn his hands, so he has, you see in the trailer, these giant claws made. So it's not really until the last scene or two in the movie where he's fighting people with these claw hands. It's super sloppy. You'd say this is ideal for Mystery Science Theater, and it actually was. This is also known as Lion Man, and they did run it on Mystery Science Theater as Lion Man. It lends itself to being watched with a group of friends and just ragging on it because it's so cheap and hackneyed, and the dubbing is sort of shoddy and fun. So I enjoyed this movie. But actually, what I enjoyed more, there's a co-feature on this Blu-ray set that was the original co-feature on the double bill when it played in America, called The Brawl Busters, which is a late 70s, early 80s martial arts film. And it's everything I want. I love kung fu movies, and they don't even have to be particularly good. It's bad dubbing. It's very creative martial arts, very interesting, cheap special effects. I was laughing my butt off through half of the movie, and it was really fun, and the fu was pretty good. So I would say if you like trashy movies or trashy action movies from the 70s, or you want that retro grindhouse feel, this is a really good disc to have. This is one I'm very happy that I get to keep, that they sent me, because I really liked it a lot. Now we move to the Arrow video corner, which is the time, if you know and you enjoy the show, when Tom gets an arrow in his right in the watch pocket there. We have two films to talk about, if I can squeeze them in time. First up is a film from legendary Italian director Roberto Rossellini, father of Isabella, and it is the tale of Garibaldi, the man who led forces to unify Italy in the late 1800s. And the title of this film is, what is it? Sorry.
Viva.
Thank you. Viva L'Italia.
Wonderful idea.
New hidden magic with conditioners. The first rich hairspray.
So what you have here is a roughly 2-hour film that tells the tale of the unification of Italy. I didn't know this. It was various little like kingdoms or territories that, due to this revolution, they all brought together as one. And it's a historical period drama. Personally, I thought it was a little dry, a little dull. Battle scenes are pretty well done. Apparently, Rossellini was approached and asked, it was like the 100th anniversary of this thing happening, and he was asked by like the government to make a film about it. So the film is on there. It looks really good.
Okay.
It also, I didn't know this until afterwards, in the special features, there's an English language version that was prepared for American territories. So it's English dubbed, the titles are in English, and it's shorter. It's like 80-something minutes. There is also a lengthy interview with Ruggero Deodato, who's known by people like me as the guy who directed Cannibal Holocaust, but apparently he was the right-hand man for Rossellini. So there's all these tales about making this movie and about how he came up in the industry, and that was really interesting. And then there's a short visual essay, they call it, which was kind of like a PowerPoint with a not dynamic speaker, talking about the history of Italy and the history of this guy who people like me have never heard of. So I think this is more for people who are interested in history or big fans of Rossellini who've probably never seen this film before. So this is what I like about Arrow and Arrow Academy, is they put out this really obscure stuff like this. Might not be for everybody, but if it is for you, you are thrilled to have this presentation of it. One more left, if we can squeeze it in. Another film from Italia. Here is a film directed by several of the top directors in Italy of the mid-60s. Pardon?
Maybe.
Maybe. Well, the trailer may or may not be what I'm talking about right now. Notable for us because it features Clint Eastwood in a small role before he was really famous over here, and it is entitled The Witches.
Watch it in the car wash that lets you see right through.
Okay, that's not the right trailer.
Okay.
But that's fine. That's a trailer for a movie I now want to see. So thank you. What The Witches is, it's 4 or 5 stories, I meant to look at my cheat sheet, that are done by like Fellini, Visconti, some of the biggest like Italian directors of their day, all starring the same female lead, and it's just little aspects of Italian life. It's really cool, and it looks gorgeous.
You said Eastwood was in them. So is he like doing this while he's off some of the spaghetti westerns or something,
I have to imagine. This movie is from 66 or 67, which is, I know the spaghetti westerns he did for Leone were shot a few years before we saw them here.
Right.
So it must have been around that time where he was over there. So he was probably still, maybe he was known for Fistful of Dollars at that point here, probably still Rawhide. But he plays a husband, and some of them are dramatic, some of these little stories, some of them are comedic, and they look amazing, like really interesting. Like when you pop the Blu-ray menu in, you're just like, what is this movie, and where has it been all my life? Partly for just the crazy visuals and partly for how good it looks. Again, it is presented uncut in Italian with English subtitles, or you can see the English language version, which I wish I'd known about earlier because Clint Eastwood dubs his own voice in that.
Really?
And it's odd hearing some deeper Italian male voice when Clint's supposed to be talking.
Right.
So if you watch the English version, that's there. There's an audio commentary by Tim Lucas from Video Watchdog, who's the Mario Bava biographer, and by studying Bava for 20 or 30 years, knows a lot about the Italian film industry. So that's really informative and interesting. And this was a movie that I'd always ever heard of, but I'd never managed to see, and I really like this one a lot. If you like mod 60s and suave European locales and decor and clothing and cars, this has it in abundance. really interesting to see the lead actress being so versatile. Like, it took me a while to realize, oh, that's the same woman from that previous segment who was this glamour queen is now a frumpy housewife. And it was really well done. So I would say The Witches is definitely one to look for if you're a Clint Eastwood fan. You've probably never seen it, or you like the work of any of the directors. Somehow, we managed to get through everything we wanted to talk about today. And have
well, I think it helps when I don't have the right trailers. So
well, that does too, and when I haven't seen
a few minutes too,
or can't remember them. So next week we have
maybe 3 or 4 movies? Can you believe it? We'll be able to talk about turkeys and drawers and things like that because we won't have 14 movies to talk about.
And the best place for turkeys are in your drawers.
Yes.
So until then, I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are
the Cinemaniacs.